Well, good morning, everybody. I'll get this underway quite quickly because we're running a bit behind time, as you know. We've got 3 sessions here, and they've all gallantly offered to introduce themselves. I'll introduce myself. I'm Bill Rosenberg. I'm from the Council of Trade Unions. I'm chairing this session. But what we'll do is we'll allow each of them to progress, to introduce themselves, 10 minutes each, and I'll be ruthlessly cutting them off at that time, and then we'll have a bit of time at the end for questions. So, first session, Wayne Church. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Kia ora koutou. Good morning, everyone. I'm Wayne Church from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, and today I want to show you an example of how we're using business statistics to meet the needs of those interested in small business and to understand more about the characteristics of what small businesses are all about. But first of all, a quick quiz to see how much you already know. First question is, what percentage of New Zealand enterprises have fewer than 20 employees? It's one that's often quoted. Is it 57%, 77%, 80%, 90% or 97%? I hear a lot of 97s, so that's correct, 97. The next question, what percentage of jobs are created by those firms with 1 to 20 employees? Perhaps show of hands for 22%, 32%, 42%, 52%, oh, no takers, or 70%? Oh, one. Thank you, too. Thank you. So the answer is 42%. That's from the linked employer-employee data. And final question, what percentage of businesses do you think with between 6 and 20 employees export? Oh, I gave the answer. Sorry, it's very, very sensitive. 23%, yes. Sorry about that. And that's, I'm sure you knew that, and that's from the Business Operations Survey. So often we see a range of answers for these types of questions, and they're often overestimated or underestimated in reports and in media. We hear about small businesses being the backbone of the economy, the lifeblood, the engine room. That's thought to be generating most of our employment and income and innovation. But the real statistics tell a slightly different picture, and that's the aim of our small business fact sheet, was to increase people's understanding of the true contribution that small businesses make to the economy. So that links in well with my team's work at MBIE. Our team provides advice to the Minister for Small Business on issues affecting SMEs. So a couple of years ago, the former MED produced this report, which some of you might recognise, Structure and Dynamics. And it was a great report, filled with statistics on small business, and a good resource for analysts and researchers. But the feedback that we got from small business was that it was a lot to get through, and wasn't quite useful for them. So we had several discussions with small businesses, and they simply told us to give us the facts, trim this down, keep it short, and make it easy to get. And although this report has a lot of really good facts in it, small businesses don't have the time to read it. There's also a lot of data, as you know, on the Stats New Zealand website, but it's based by surveys, and it's hard to pick out those statistics relevant for small businesses. So we wanted to collect the key stats that we thought were relevant package them all together in one place and make it easy for people to access and print. So we looked around and we already saw that Statistics New Zealand produced this great little fact sheet a couple of years ago on the labour market in Auckland. And we like the look of this, this kind of product. It's very colourful, it just gives you the key facts about that. So we came up with, we couldn't quite condense it all into one page, unfortunately, but we came up with 3 pages, and this is last year's fact sheet. And I'll show you the first two pages, just to give you an idea of what we came up with. Because it was an MB production, our designers had more freedom to experiment with colours and layout. And the fact sheet sources data from a range of Statistics New Zealand surveys, business demography, business operations survey, annual enterprise survey, the linked employer-employee data, and the quarterly employment survey. And we work closely with the Statistics New Zealand's business demography team in Auckland to develop this fact sheet. And we soon learned by having that close contact with them what the limits of what we could do and what we couldn't do and what we couldn't say. So we wanted to push the boundaries a little bit, but we also wanted to make sure that Stats New Zealand was comfortable with what we were coming up with. So we released this in March last year. It got some great feedback. It was downloaded from the Ministry's website about 1,000 times a month. We saw these charts used in reports and presentations of other organisations. And we also, one person said that they were using it as a teaching resource for their business class. I think the most satisfying outcome of all was that some of the key statistics that we had before, like the 97% of all enterprises that have fewer than 20 employees, were starting to be picked up by media and other organisations as being a statistic they could easily remember and quote. However, the fact sheet doesn't pretend to have all the answers, and in fact it asks more questions than answers, but we see it as just a starting point for further research and analysis. So looking ahead, we hope to release the 2014 version of the fact sheet very, very soon, and this time it'll be co-branded with Statistics New Zealand, which is fantastic. We hope that's a sign that, Stats New Zealand is becoming more comfortable with the way that we're packaging their statistics. The Ministry is also looking into small businesses more. Going this year, they're providing more in-depth analysis of the small business sector, helping to explain why the data is how it is and tell a story about small businesses in New Zealand. And finally, just through our conversations with our stakeholders, such as government departments, researchers and business organisations, we see an increasing demand for 3 areas of data in particular. The first might be no surprise, the ethnicity of business owners. For example, we just don't know how many Pacific Island business owners there are, what they do, or whether their business is different from any other kind of business. We just don't know. The second is micro businesses, and those are those firms with fewer than 5 employees. They aren't covered by the Business Operations Survey. They include home businesses, lifestyle blocks. We don't know a lot about those kinds of firms. And finally, exiting businesses. Why do firms close? We have the numbers of businesses closing, but we don't know the reasons why they do decide to end their business. So thank you for your attention and this opportunity to share our work. Thank you.
I'm Michael Sluyzberg, Acting National Manager, Research and Evaluation from Inland Revenue. And this is a joint presentation from me and Melissa McKenzie from Statistics New Zealand. We have 300 seconds each to present this subject, but it's more about sharing what has been done, and you are very welcome to extend your knowledge about the product by visiting our website or Statistics New Zealand website, which will link you to the product. So this is about industry benchmarks for small and medium enterprises. And interestingly, I yesterday attended one of the sessions which included also presentation about industry benchmarks from a private company. So it's definitely, to me, a sign that the theme is on demand, and this is quite an important subject. So this is how the web page looks like on IR website. And very brief, 15 seconds prehistory background for this thing. We decided probably 3 years ago that we need to develop this tool for probably 3 major groups of reasons. The first group, and the most important group, is from business perspective. Small businesses are not so well organized and well informed as Fonterra or Telecom. They need to know where they are, what is their competitive position, are they doing well or not so well as compared to their industry colleagues. And this tool gives them a chance to monitor their business performance and to compare with others within the industry. But it also has quite important objectives from the tax administration perspective. We, as tax administration, would like to be able to give them options for self-review and correcting their tax position. And to have a look, oh, I'm within the benchmark, so I'm more or less fine. Or I'm an outlier. In this case, why I'm an outlier. Maybe something wrong with my record keeping. Maybe I need to improve my reporting. So this is a kind of tool which allows SMEs and tax agents to monitor their current situation. And from Statistics New Zealand perspective, it's making more use of existing data, collected data, and to provide feedback to respondents. They share data with Statistics New Zealand, so they have to benefit from this as well. Data source, that's very straightforward. Most small businesses fill IR10, financial statements, summaries, and this is the database which we are using to produce benchmarks. All businesses which fill IR10, for the purpose of this exercise, we selected those with turnover between 60,000 and $10 million annually. Why from 60,000? Because this is a mandatory requirement for businesses to fill IR10. Below this threshold, they may or may not do it. And why 10 million? When sorry we are not following the 1 to 20 definitions, but from tax administration perspective, if it is above 10 million, they have some specific tax requirements. Methodologically, we split within each industry. We split the population into 4 quartiles. So these quartiles, of course, are industry specific. It will be one split for hairdressers and another split for mining industry. But still, it will give us 4 groups, which we call micro, small, medium, and large. But please don't forget that we are talking about SME, so it's large within small and medium. And we analyze benchmarks within these 4 turnover intervals. Important thing which I have to note after a presentation from John Edwards, that confidentiality and privacy of businesses is absolutely mandatory, and Statistics New Zealand, after they merge and analyze data, do not return any operational information to Inland Revenue. What do we present? 3 major ratios which reflect profit, money, stock, and people, salaries and wages. Three aspects of SME performance. Plus, we provide a set of specific balance sheet ratios, and we didn't select them arbitrarily, but we spoke to Zika, we spoke to tax professionals, we spoke to industries, and we selected these ratios, prioritized these ratios after all these discussions. How we can do it? At this point, probably I move it to Melissa.
Thanks, Michael. So as Michael said, I'm Melissa McKenzie and I'm from Statistics New Zealand, the annual enterprise survey team. We go about combining the data and bringing it into the publication state that you see here. So if we look at this from the perspective of an individual business owner that was wanting to find out more about what I do and how well I do it, you can go into the IRD website and search for your industry. So you can see shaded on the left to find your industry benchmarks. There's currently 45 industries up there. So in this case, I'm a cafe owner and I want to know how well I'm doing relative to my competitors. So I go in and I select cafes and restaurants, and then I need to know what my total revenue is. So roughly how much sales am I doing in the last year, so that I can compare it to the most relevant businesses to me. Okay. So once you select your turnover, you can then see the actual statistics aligned with it. So in this case, we've got the medium and the large up here, just 2, so we can show it as an example. But for example, if I was a cafe owner with $600,000 of turnover each year, I can now see that the median gross profit ratio for my industry in that turnover band is 61%. So let's say that I actually, in my company, had a gross profit ratio of 40%. Then that's a good indicator to me that there are ways I can make savings and improvements, because my competitors are doing that and are reaping the benefits of it.
What's gross profit? I mean, they're very high numbers. Does gross include what?
Gross profit comes directly off the IR10 form, and it's effectively your sales less your purchases and stock movement.
Okay. Outside purchases?
Yes. Also, I can have a look and see what's going on in the other turnover bands. So for example, if I was looking at increasing my business and therefore my turnover would increase, I can look to see what the median gross profit ratio is for a large business. So I can see that I could get a higher median potentially if I look at improving, because that's what the rest of the units in that category are doing. So that's an example of what we've done. This isn't a stagnant thing, and it's just a pilot release where we're at the moment. So one of our first priorities has been to provide more industries. In the very first release, we produced 16 industry benchmarks. We now have 45 industry benchmarks on the IRD website, and people are able to speak directly to Statistics New Zealand about getting additional benchmarks, and we'll analyse the quality on an individual basis. Another topic that we're keen to progress between IRD and stats is around the breakdown. So at the moment you can only look at yourself in your industry and in your turnover band. What we're really keen to do is actually show it so that it's for whether or not you're an employing company, for example, or a sole proprietor, and potentially what your business type might be. So it's refining that group that you're comparing yourself to even further to get the most relevant benchmark for you. As always, we've always got to focus on data quality, so that's continuous improvement. And one of the changes that we made to deal with this was around moving to the quartile approach. Originally we had fixed turnover bands. It made it a bit harder to monitor the quality and manage it, so we actually moved to the quartile approach in our next release. And as always, we're always wanting to develop our understanding and our analysis, so we'll be looking at other variables we can provide and additions that we can provide extra benefit to our users. And as always, both IR and stats are interested in hearing feedback on what's important to businesses, what's important to researchers. So if you have differing priorities or you wanted to communicate something with us, then please feel free to contact either Michael or myself.
Jobs online. we try to, and we succeed in providing what is quite a robust statistic. We provide it in a timely manner. We get the data at the beginning of each month and we get it out within about 10 working days up to the Minister. We get it from private data sources. And our main sources are Seek and Trade Me. Where else would you go if you were looking for a job and you wanted to see where it might be advertised? Jobs Online pulls together the administrative data from those two, and we are going to include the Education Gazette shortly, and we often have, or sometimes have, other people saying, oh, would you like to include our data as well? We get that information, we use SAS, get a whole lot of numbers out, and then we use some spreadsheets to create some indices. The indices that we produce look like this. It's very interesting to see in Colin Lynch's presentation earlier on, he had the chart of filled jobs, and it was exactly the same shape as our job vacancies. And it was good to, I've often wondered about that little bit of noise over there, and it was very reassuring to see that his chart had exactly the same noise at the same time. That was quite refreshing. We can see in this, we do an all vacancies index, we do a skilled vacancies index, and then we break them further down by a group of industries, by 5 main regions, which is basically Wellington, Auckland, the rest of the North Island, Christchurch and the rest of the South Island. And we also break it down by some occupation groups, professionals, managers and trades and services. The good thing about the Jobs Online Index is that we can see some of the global and national events which have impacted on New Zealand. And definitely you can see that sudden drop from the global financial crisis. You can see the start of the turnaround, and you can see where the earthquakes occurred, which delayed some of the recovery overall. It's now a Tier 1 statistic, and we're very proud that that had happened. I'll hand over to Anne, who'll talk a little bit about how it came about.
Hi. The development of Jobs Online has happened over a long period of time, and there is an iterative process that each step is refreshed as we go through it. Now we take the administrative data from Seek and Trade Me jobs. The occupations are then coded automatically using computer programs to ANSCO, which is the Australian New Zealand Standard Classification of Occupations. Now, due to this, we were able to cooperate with DUA, who are now the Department of Employment in Australia, because we are working on the same dictionary. The coding mechanism has been reviewed over time. For example, we did an extensive review of the pre-coded job titles file. We looked at the seasonal adjustment recently and adjusted for trading day effects and Easter effects in the data, and that removed a lot of the volatility. We've also undertaken things such as semi-automating our spreadsheets to speed the process up. We receive the data on the 1st of every month, and within about 2.5 weeks of that it is published as a monthly report. Now, producing the Jobs Online Index requires cooperation with private and public organisations and requires stakeholder engagement with people who may not be resident in New Zealand, such as Australia, but also other government departments and private organisations. So, at the moment, as you'll notice, Education Gazette is under consideration for inclusion. Now, why is Jobs Online important? Well, basically it tracks well with other labour market indicators. For example, the unemployment rate. As vacancies increase, the unemployment rate tends to fall. We've found a relationship also between difficulty finding skilled labour. For example, when employers are finding it difficult to find labour, vacancies tend to increase, or advertisement of vacancy increases. Another indicator we looked at was employment rate growth, or the employment rate. This can include new jobs and churn, but the basic relationship that as vacancies increase, employment rate increases applies. I'll hand you back to John.
The last point we want to make is about some of the challenges that we are faced with producing the jobs online. And you can see that by dealing with various sets of data, that in itself produces some challenges. We have to work on slightly different classifications for the different groups of people